Hello and welcome to another episode of the RC Shop. Today we're going to be working on the shop truck, which is an SCX 10.2, an Axial SCX 10.2. I've already done a few things to this, a few upgrades, if you will. As you can see, I have changed the wheels and tires. First thing, the wheels we have changed to the Vanquish 1.9 bead locks. I mean, there's so much more weight to these than the originals, and plus they're 6 screw bead locks. In other words, it just takes 6 screws to actually change the tire on and off, which is really nice. The tires are Proline BF Goodrich Crawler TAs, and I'm running half. Basically, these are 1.9 wheels, and I'm running half foam in the tires, which gives them basically a low air pressure for good crawling and good wraparound with the tread. So they're actually foams out of a smaller tire that I stretched onto the 1.9. I believe they were out of a set of 1.55s, I think. But basically, it fills the tire half with foam and then it's half with air. And with these Vanquish bead locks, you get a good seal, a good air seal, but it gives a nice kind of low air pressure feel to them. The shocks I've switched over to Broom Racing 110 millimeter shocks. Now these are 20 millimeters taller than the stock shocks. I wanted to give it a 20 millimeter lift, or at least I'm hoping to be able to do that. The only problem with this, with going to obviously with a taller shock, is your geometry changes, and so it's really giving me when the front suspension compresses, it really shifts everything to the left. Like the entire suspension shifts over, and that's really due to the 3-link up front, using a pan head bar and then a 3-link setup. So what I thought I would do is try changing that over to a 4-link setup, to a 4-link system in front and back, and that should alleviate that issue. Everything should compress straight. Now we'll add some bump steer, but at crawling speeds, I don't see much of an issue there. This thing's will not be moving very fast, so bump steer shouldn't be an issue off of a 4-link setup up front. Now I will say, when I have run this with the taller shocks, and when I did the higher angle on the drive shaft, it wasn't 5 minutes into the run and I snapped the plastic. So where the metal ties into the plastic part of the drive shaft, it snapped right off, my back drive shaft. So I'm replacing them. So I'm replacing them with the RC 4-wheel drive all metal drive shafts. These things are beefy and tough, and I think it should fix the problem. The angle's not that tall of an angle, so I don't think it should be an issue. I just think it was the way the plastic shafts and just the stock shafts weren't beefy enough at all to handle that higher angle plus some wear and tear. Now, along with setting up a 4-link up front, I'm using the some SSD steel lower links to put all the way around. This will give us a lower center of gravity. They're much heavier than the stock aluminum pieces. So, and I'm just doing the bottom four so that the tops stay aluminum, keeping our weight low. So we'll have the Vanquish wheels, which are much heavier than stock, and then we have the lower steel links from SSD that'll give us a lower center of gravity. And then I'm also throwing a bunch of I've got a bunch of ST Racing concept aluminum parts that'll be going on also, like bumper mounts and servo mounts and all this. Give us some rigidity up top, but also keeping the weight low high. Because I am also going to a Mojave 2 solid plastic body, which are quite heavy, along with the CC Hand Style B rear bed. And all this really adds weight above, or high center of gravity weight. So I'm going to try to keep more weight down center of gravity and then lighten up top as best I can. I've also got these Vanquish shock hoops that I'm going to use also. Now, the problem with this is, as you can see with the CC Hand rear bed, basically the rear cage in the back here, the way the shocks are set to mount up, they mount to that rear cage made by, from RC 4-wheel drive, the CC Hand. I really don't like the way it mounts because it puts the puts the shock on an angle I'm not happy with, especially the taller shock. So I'll probably be cutting that out and then using the Vanquish hoops in the back along with the cage. I'm going to try to make that work somehow as best I can. But I think that should be the solution for the angle on the shocks. And then also keeping weight down. So those aluminum hoops are much lighter than the steel hoop with the cage. So let's take a closer look at the body that I was speaking of, the Mojave 2 body from RC 4-wheel drive. You can see it's still just raw plastic, so that's got to go to the body shop yet. So we'll do paint and body work on that, get that set up. Let me get all the rest of the components installed along with the 4-link setup, and see if that works out. Hopefully these taller shocks will work. If it ends up not, if I just can't get the geometry right, which could be a possibility, I'll just go back to a 90 millimeter shock. I just really wanted to get a little bit more lift and a little bit more clearance, a little more rock clearance with them. But we'll see if that works. But let me get all this stuff assembled up, and then we'll take a look at it and see if it works. All right, so I've got everything installed on the car now. I have the body just kind of sitting on it. It won't sit all the way flush down because the motor's in the back, in the back there of the cab. I'm gonna convert this to front engine, so that'll move out of the way, and then the body will slide right down for us. As far as the shocks in the back, so I did cut the loop out, or the hoop out, the shock hoop out for the shock mounts that came with the rear cage. And then I had to kind of modify the shock hoops, the Vanquish shock hoops that I have also. I had to notch them kind of pretty high up, so that they'll fit over the rails of the back cage and mount up nice and flush, so the shocks would be on a good angle. So then I just touched everything up with some black paint, mounted it up, and it seems to be all right. I did run the truck a little bit. I don't know. I'm gonna have to work with the shocks. I think I've got too much spring in them. They're pretty stiff, so I'm not getting great articulation. But you can see I did go to the 4-link up front, and it does give some bump steer, but it's not that big a deal. It really doesn't affect much. But you can see I did go to the 4-link and then remove the Panhard bar, which I think before I was saying Panhead, which is absolutely not right. That's obviously a Harley-Davidson motor. But anyways, went away from the 3-link setup to a 4-link setup, which I think's gonna do us better. But yeah, so there it is in this state. Got a ways to go yet. I got to do the front engine conversion, or I'm going to do a front end conversion. I'm gonna put an interior in it. Got to do all the body work and paint. And then I think we'll be pretty close. I'm still the jury is still out on these 110 millimeter shocks. We'll see how it works out. I mean, if nothing else, I can go the 90 millimeter and it'll work just fine. But yeah, so that's it for now. I'll see you guys next week.